So the president delivered his 10th televised address yesterday, coming into our homes once again, as he always does, giving us updates on government's efforts to address the coronavirus. As we do know, every public policy has a communication angle. In fact, when it comes to health issues, communication is so critical to how those issues are addressed, and very much so during a public health pandemic. So what do you think about the way the president communicated the address yesterday? Did it resonate with you? How did you take it? Was he very clear in what he was saying? Did he communicate very well? Was he forthright and very clear in what he communicated to the audience? So that's the focus for this video today. So first of all, I do think that this was Nana Addo as we've always known him. Very confident, very purposeful, very clear-minded, clear-eyed, clearly spoken in his address, very forthright and well-measured, confident, as he's always been. So he's got those non-verbals really down, right? Now, when we move from there, getting into the address and his communication style, how did he really communicate the issue? In order to analyze any public discourse, there are certain things you need to consider. One of it is the person's ideologies and beliefs. And that's one thing people don't people don't pay attention to. But the thing is that a person's beliefs and ideologies influences his actions and his behavior and his communication. So if you look at the underlying elements or the underlying ideologies in his speech, you realize that he bases it on a few things. One, Afrocentricity. Two, patriotism. And there were a lot of nativist or nationalistic elements in there. He tries to use that to appeal to our sentiments, right? So he talks about, we'll do this our way, the Ghanaian way, and all of that. And he repeats the phrase fellow Ghanaians about 7 times, as I counted, right? So he's trying to appeal to our nationalistic and our patriotic sentiments or elements in order to buy into what he's communicating to us. Remember that, and that has been Nana Addo. Remember that press conference he had with the French president, where he said Africa does not need to depend on aid and other things. That's really him trying to project a certain Afrocentric way of doing things. And he says, we're not going to copy other people. We are going to do this the Ghanaian way, because this is what suits our social economic context. So that's one persuasive device that he uses right there to convince us. And he also depends on religious statements. Okay, if you listen to the address, the battle is the Lord's. With faith in the Lord, this too shall pass. Okay, so these are religious appeals. We call these religious appeals, which he uses to persuade the audience in order to get them on board. Because remember, he has to buy the public's support or get the public on board to these things.
Fellow Ghanaians, ultimately, the battle is the Lord's. And with faith in him, we will emerge from this greater than before. We are one people. We are Ghanaians. And we stand together in joy and in times of trouble. We are a people with an exceptional history. And we are the proud promoters of the Black Star of Africa. We've all gone down together. We should all rise together. This too shall pass.
The third persuasive, so we have religious appeals, we have repetition, we have the communal or collectivist or patriotic sentiments that he uses. And I think the last thing that he uses is also data. He tries to use science and data. And that's very important in public communication or in public speaking, because you want to find out that does the speaker have data or enough support for what he's saying? And he does rely on some data in terms of the numbers that have been tested, in terms of the recovery rate, and then in terms of the death rate. And he says, well, our situation is not as bad as other countries. We are not dying in the thousands. And our health system is not overly burdened, although he agrees that the infrastructure could be better. So he bases this on that and says, well, if you look at the data, that kind of gives us room to do some kind of phased opening.
We've conducted 218,425 tests. The number of positive cases stands at 8,070. 2,947 persons have recovered. 36 have sadly died.
So these are his communication strategies, or the symbolic devices, as we call them technically, that he uses to communicate to us. So, so from ideology, from communication perspective, the last thing that I would say is that from crisis communication perspective, and this is something that has been very consistent from his first 9 or so addresses, he is very empathetic. You see, and in a crisis situation, the speaker has to be empathetic. You need to be able to tap into the feelings and the emotions of people to let them know that you feel their pain. Otherwise, I mean, people are just going to be mad at you because it's like you are very insensitive. So he uses empathy a lot. And he says, I know these things have brought about difficulties to the Ghanaian public. I know we have been suffering together. You know, he tries to have a very horizontal communication, not top-down. You know, I know these things are burdensome, but we need to do it to get over it. So empathy is one tool that he relies on very beautifully to do his communication. I mean, whether it resonates with Ghanaians or not, that's a whole different matter. But it's definitely a strategy that he uses. And I've been looking at these addresses over the past, couple of months. He's been very he's been very careful and very conscious about using this particular strategy. And before we go, I need to mention that the president always makes statements of, well, not always, but at least in this address, he once again made statements of self-efficacy. By that I mean he talked about how we can address the situation and what food we need to eat, what kind of self-disciplinary measures we need to take. And in a crisis, that's also helpful, because you need to tell people what they can do to get themselves out of that crisis or to reduce the effect of those crises. So let me know what you think. I'm sure we can take this discussion in so many other ways. There are one or two things that he does according to crisis communication as well. He also expresses uncertainty. He says, well, it is possible that this could surge. Right? So he's not trying to be, and this is important because he's trying to be realistic. He's not trying to be overly unrealistic with the situation. He says it could surge. So he's kind of telling us or recognizing uncertainty. So there are a couple of things that work. Now, in terms of what doesn't work, first of all, the time of the address. People have complained and complained and complained. 10 o'clock, way too late. So they really need to think about that, the timing. Next, feedback. It'll be very beautiful if the president, for instance, is able to do it in such a way that he gets some feedback from Ghanaians. So, because we're in a social media age, so we need some kind of interaction, right? So first of all, feedback in terms of the interaction, and then also feedback in terms of even journalists. So if he does not even get feedback from the public, at least there should be some journalists there doing some follow-ups, because Ghanaians have concerns. And it is a job of journalists to be able to reflect those concerns. So I believe that would definitely make the press conferences, the televised addresses kind of more lively in a way. So this is what I have for now, the pro-con analysis of his speeches, what worked, what didn't work. I'm sure you have your own concerns. Let me hear from you. Do you like the way the president spoke? Did it resonate with you? Were you convinced? I would really like to hear from you. So hit that button and comment on this, and let us all contribute to the public discourse or to the public space as far as our nation is concerned and as far as addressing this present pandemic is concerned. My name is Echi Sikanku, coming your way once again with these discourse analysis, public discourse analysis. Thanks very much for listening, and hope to come your way once again another time. God bless.